Hello and welcome to the CarsNow video. Please make sure that you have your CarsNow booklet and a pen with you as you watch this video. Before you start working your way through this video, please look through your programming booklet and make sure that you are familiar with the sequence control structure, how modules and parameters work, and how to write arrays in pseudocode. The sequence control structure is the easiest of the control structures to understand. As we have talked about in class, for a sequence control structure to work, each step must have been executed before the program can go on to the next step. When all of the steps have been executed, the program ends. First of all, take note that usually the first keyword will be begin and the last keyword is end. This is like starting of a sentence with a capital letter and finishing it with a full stop. You will also notice in this example that hours, rate and pay have all been initialized. Please note carefully how to initialize variables. Hours has in brackets the word int for integer. Hours will only deal with whole numbers. Next is rate. This data type is real as there is a decimal point in the number. Pay will also be a real data type because any answer will involve a decimal point. After the data types have been shown, there is an equal sign followed by whatever the initial value is. Once the initialization has been done, we come on to another keyword, which also should be in capital letters, and that is input. Here, the values are put into the program. After inputting, we have the processing, and in this case, it is a calculation. The keyword calculate is shown in capitals, but putting this keyword in is optional. But I would still put it in because it makes it clearer for the user. We come on to the output phase. Look carefully at how to express an output. Again, this keyword is in capitals and whatever is being outputted is in this case pay, is surrounded by round brackets. Here is our method of working through a pseudocode problem. We need to make sure that we read the question carefully so that we have a good understanding of what the question is asking. Stop the video for a moment and read the question on page 1 of your CarsNow booklet. Can you tell me what we're being asked to write? Is it going to be the main procedure, or is it a module or a function? Here is our checklist, and you can see that the first thing we need to do, even before we put the keyword begin in, we need to give our algorithm a title. We are going to be writing a module. This is going to mean giving the module a name and writing in whatever parameters are needed. In your CarsNow booklet, we will highlight the elements in our checklist shortly. Here is a reminder of what the question is. You may remember from slide 4 that after we have carefully read the question, we need to identify with the use of coloured pencils the inputs, outputs and the processing we need to write into our pseudocode. Just to remind you, the job of this module is to calculate the tax and net pay. This module will not display the output, but would send the answer back through the parameters to the main menu, where the output would be shown. So in short, you do not need to put the word output into your pseudocode solution. Stop the video for the moment and on page 1 of your booklet, identify what inputs, processing, as well as any other important information you will need to have in order to write your pseudocode. In a later slide, I will be explaining to you why we will not even need to be putting in the input values either. Okay, so how did you get on? On this slide, you can see that I have several categories, which I have different colours for. So, staff ID and pay gross are inputs. So the processing is going to calculate the tax to be paid and the net pay, and this is going to be for each salesperson. We also need to call our module staff tax. I am sure you did pretty well annotating page 1. Can you make sure that your annotation is the same as mine? Remember, you are going to be using this booklet along with all of your others as a revision document. So it's important to be as thorough as possible. Rewind this video to the previous slide to check that you have all of the relevant information. So, here is our tick list so far. We have read the question and we have identified the important information in the question by annotating. In order to see exactly what we need to include in our pseudocode, we write down any requirements and place inputs, processing and outputs into a table. Spend a few moments looking at the question again and seeing why I have put the following information into the table. If you are still unsure, then you'll need to come and have a chat with me. In your CarsNow booklet on page 2, write down the requirements and the information into the table. If you need to, look back in this video to the 10th slide to find the answer. You can see from this slide that we are making really good progress and are almost ready to start writing our pseudocode. So, here are the elements we need to include in our final pseudocode solution. First of all, we need to give the module a name and put in the parameters. Then we need to include the keyword begin. Remember, this needs to be in capital letters. You may think we have some variables to declare, but this would be wrong. The variables that have been passed using parameters may well be global variables. Therefore, our staff tax module can work with these modules and does not need to declare them. The next thing we would put in are the inputs. However, the staff ID and pay gross values will have been inputted in the main menu. And what has come into the submodule are the values of these variables. After the inputs, we need to do some processing, and this involves a calculation. I would use the keyword calculate to show the line where the processing is being done. We need to show the end of the module pseudocode, so we put end with the name of the module in brackets. Since we're only dealing with a module, we do not just put end, because this is not the end of the whole algorithm. On page 2, underneath the table, you have a checklist. Pause in this video and go and highlight the elements we're going to need on your checklist. Look at slide 18 if you need reminding of what elements you need to include. Okay, let's see where we are. Here is the problem we are looking at. We have read the problem twice at least. We have identified by annotation the inputs, processing and any other important information. We have put this information into a table and we have highlighted the elements we need for a pseudocode solution on our checklist. After we have done each step, we have ticked it off on our tick sheet. Since we have gone through all of the steps, we should have a clear idea of what elements we need to include in our algorithm and where we should put them in. So let's go and do that now. We look at the checklist and we see that we need to start with a module name and the parameters in the bracket. Here is what we put in. You will remember from your class lesson that parameters can either be by reference or by value. Parameters which are by value are sent to the submodule from the main module, but will not return to the main module. So staff ID and pay gross are needed in the submodule. Staff ID is not needed in the calculations, but the pay gross certainly is. It is the pay tax and pay net which are by reference, because it is these values which will be returned to the main menu and output done there. Remember, this module is only doing the calculations. Back to checklist, and we can see that the next thing we put in is the word begin in capital letters, as you can see here. Okay, so onto the inputs. The pay gross is the input that is needed to do the calculations, but as I said earlier, this value has already been entered into the program from the main menu and been sent to this submodule, so we do not need to enter it again. We then put in the calculations, which is the processing part. Remember, calculate is a key word, and this needs to be in capital letters. We then write in the calculations. The last element to put in is the keyword end, with the module name in brackets. And here is the complete solution. Pause this video and write this solution down on page 3 of your booklet. Now, let's pick up the pace a little. And on this slide, you will see a problem you can solve. The dogs galore problem, and is found on page 4 of your booklet, along with the tick list you should follow. You should pause the video on this slide. You will need to identify the inputs, outputs and processing that your algorithm may need. Along with this, any other important information as well. You need to annotate page 4, then on page 5 complete the requirements, fill in the table and highlight the elements you will need in your checklist. On page 6, write down your solution to the dogs galore problem. Only then restart this video and see the solution on the next slide. Here is my solution. I hope you got this correct, or at least close to it. The parts which are most important at this stage is that you name the title correctly, that your keywords are capitalized, and that you have a begin and an end. Please make sure that you have copied my answer into your booklet at the bottom of page 6. Now, on to our second task, and you will find this on page 7 of your booklet. At the bottom of this slide, you will see a question. Why would you use an array for this module? You will remember that an array is able to store several values of the same data type. In this problem, you could have several arrays. These arrays are called pay gross and pay tax, which store specific information on each salesperson's wages. Let's see how to write an array. The information is in your programming booklet. Let's use max temperature as an example of how to name an array. Max temperature is the name of the array. After the equal sign, we see what data type the array is. In this case, integer. The word day is the name we give to the elements in the array, and the squared bracket x are the number of elements in the array. Mark list and city names follow the same syntax. You can also see on the slide how to initialize input and output data from an array. To input and output data from an array, you need to use a for loop, as you will know the number of elements in the array. Take note of when you use the round and square brackets. Knowing how to write an array is important, so spend the time practicing how to do this. On this slide, we see an example from your programming booklet of how to name an array, as well as input and output a set of scores. You will see from the exam array that this array's elements are called score, and that this array has 20 elements. So here is our tick sheet again. Pause the video and do the first 3 bullet points. So on page 7 you will need to annotate the CarsNow problem and identify any inputs, outputs, processing and any other important information. When you have done that, start the video and see my annotation on the next slide. Here is my annotation. Make sure your annotation is the same as mine. Now, on page 8 of your booklet, you need to write down the requirements and put the essential information into the table. Pause the video and then start it when you are ready. In the requirements, the first 2 bullet points are mentioned in the problem. The third bullet point is where we have made a decision to use an array. The table shows input and processing because this module is only concerned with finding the answers. The output would be shown in the main menu. Pause the video again and make sure that you have all this information in your requirements and table section before you continue. We are nearly there. In the bottom half of page 8 you have your checklist. Have a go at highlighting the elements you think you will need in order to write your pseudocode. Pause the video and then restart it when you are ready to see the answer. Make sure that your checklist is the same as mine. Take note that the calculate is done inside the for loop and not outside. Also, it is important to remember that you bookend your loops. So if you open a for loop, you must have an end for as well as an end with the module name in brackets. Pause the video and make sure that your checklist is correct and then continue when you're ready. Well done. We have done all the preparation work and we should be ready to write our pseudocode. Before we get started, I have written what I would think would be in the main menu. You can see that the arrays have been named and elements in all of the arrays have been given the same name, employee. Data has been inputted into all of the arrays and then the arrays of pay gross and pay tax have been sent as parameters to the module total wages. Yes, you can send arrays as parameters. Finally, you can see that the results would be outputted in the main menu. You are now going to have to pause the video and on page 9 have a go at writing the pseudocode for this module. When you are ready, the next slide will give you the solution. Here is my solution. The pay gross and pay tax would have carried over all of the employees' data. So all this module has to do is the calculation. The squared bracket x's is each element. So the first employee's data, which would be element number 0, adds to the total gross pay. Then the second calculation subtracts the first employee's pay gross minus their pay tax. Then this answer goes towards finding the total net pay. The pseudocode then loops around 2 more times for the other employees until eventually we get the final total gross pay and total net pay. It's okay if you did not get this all correct, but as long as you understand how the pseudocode works, you will be better prepared for the next question. Make sure that on page 9 you have put down both your solution and mine. If you are still unsure about how the solution works, come and see me and we can have a chat. So here is this one. I would like you to have a go at on your own. When you hand your booklet in, I will be able to see how you're getting on. On page 10 and 11 of your CarsNow booklet, complete all the necessary information and don't forget to annotate. Here is the last slide. Please make sure that all of your booklet is completed. because you will need this booklet to revise from. I look forward to seeing your efforts, and thanks for watching this video. Goodbye.